Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, College Planning 101, How to Prepare, Pay, and Stay in College. I'm Robin Lind, COPFCU Student Branch Coordinator, and I'll be today's moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. To expand or collapse your control panel, simply click the orange arrow button. You're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. We have several handouts for today's webinar, as well as a PDF of the slides. To access the handouts, click the handouts arrow to view, or you can save the documents from today's webinar. All attendees are muted for today's webinar to eliminate background noise. To ask questions during the meeting, please click the questions arrow and type your question inside the panel box. You can send in your questions anytime during the presentation. I'll be monitoring the questions and we'll address them periodically throughout the webinar. So now I'm going to turn the webinar over to your presenter, Denise Burmeister. Denise is the Director of Strategic Partnerships for CU Student Choice, our student education and lending partner.
All right. Thank you so much, Robin. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you to all of the attendees. I know it's a big endeavor to think about paying for college, and our goal for this hour is to help you feel more comfortable with that process and get some information on what to expect. I would encourage you to attend as many of these types of events as you possibly can as your student heads towards college, because different presenters will focus on different things, and you'll certainly learn a lot at each and every event that you attend. I wanted to start by first addressing, is college still worth it? There's been a lot of attention in recent years on the increasing cost of college, and want to make sure that everyone does realize that there's still certainly a very big reward for going to college. You can see here that lifetime earnings for those people who go to college and become a degree earner will be approximately $1 million more over their lifetime. So there is definitely that financial reward. Also, if that person who's attained that college degree were to become unemployed, statistically, they're going to spend about half the amount of time unemployed while they're looking for another job as someone who doesn't finish that college degree. So college isn't for everyone, but it's certainly still a very worthwhile endeavor and has lifelong benefits for those students who do go. Some things that you can be thinking about as you're looking at the college process: start early, prepare as early as you possibly can. These are some things that you can be doing during junior and senior year. But if your student is a freshman or even younger than that, a lot of this information is still going to apply. You definitely want to start early in the world of financial aid. That old saying, the early bird gets the worm, is definitely true. The more prepared you are as that student heads towards college, the better off you're going to be. You can see both junior year and senior year end with saving money, because anything you can save throughout that student's lifetime or their high school years, that's going to be advantageous, because anything that you can pay out of pocket for which you don't have to take a loan, that will save you a lot of money in interest over the course of that student's lifetime as they're repaying anything that they had to borrow to get through school. Some of the other things you're going to want to focus on, things like college prep courses, if you're going to use tutors, those things that are going to help your student get a higher GPA, or, once schools are really looking at ACT and SAT again, those higher scores, take everything with that cost benefit approach. How much is this going to cost me to pay the tutor or take this course? And how much do I think that will benefit in additional scholarship dollars? So really be frugal and look at the benefits you're going to receive, and is it worth the cost of paying for that additional service? I already mentioned attending as many college nights, financial aid nights, online webinars on this topic, because you'll continue to learn information as you go to each and every event. We're going to talk specifically to the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, but these are all good things to keep in mind as that student starts preparing for going to college. Specifically for those seniors out there, really keep a focus the senior year. It's really common to see students drop off a little bit in interest once they're accepted to their college of choice. But do realize you're going to send in that final transcript from your senior year, and schools want to see that, yes, you had a great time during your senior year, but you used it to your advantage and kept that grade point average up, so that scholarships that might have been awarded to you based on your GPA, that's still reflected in your GPA once your senior year is finished. So just a little bit of an insight there on keeping a focus during that senior year. Scholarships are going to be very important as you look at paying for college, and these can start the searches for those as early as the junior year. Most scholarships are going to be awarded to seniors. There are some, though, that you can apply as a junior, and then they will hold the funds for you until you enter college. Resources that you should absolutely make sure you're checking in with and utilizing: first, start with your high school guidance counselor. They're extremely helpful in making you aware of awards that they know students from your high school have received in the past. They're also oftentimes contacted by local scholarships that are available. So the online search engines you see here, these are the most reputable, the most widely used. They have a lot of national scholarship information. Your high school guidance counselor, though, may be contacted by local Rotary clubs or Kiwanis or Lions Club to say, hey, we've got a $500 scholarship available to a graduate of your high school. So do be sure and check in with your high school guidance counselor to become aware of any of those local scholarships that you might not find on some of the big national search engines. The great thing about the search engines is that your student can create a profile about themselves. They can let the person who's doing all of that programming know what kind of student they are. So maybe they're going to be an engineering major, their hobbies are basketball and horseback riding. Based on that information, those online search engines could identify scholarships related to engineering majors or people who like basketball. So it's a great way to broaden the net as you're looking for scholarships. You also can look, there's an app that's available called Scholly, which you can use to help search for scholarships as well. Important to say for scholarships that you do want to make sure you pay attention to deadlines. Don't miss out on an opportunity because you missed the deadline for applying. Also, be sure to follow all of the instructions. When a scholarship committee or a person who's granting a scholarship has a lot of applicants, the first thing they do is just totally disregard anyone who didn't follow the instructions or meet the deadline, because that's an application they're not going to have to look at because that person didn't follow the instructions. So make sure you meet those deadlines, follow all of those instructions. Some things that you can do to help you are things like including letters of reference, highlighting your community service work. Both of these are really important, especially when that community involvement or charity work relates to that student's intended major or their long-term career goal. So, maybe this person who's applying to college wants to be a physician, and right now they're volunteering at the blood bank or they're volunteering at a local hospital. That can be really helpful in letting that scholarship committee know, yes, they're very passionate about this area of study and they're going to do their best because they're already involved even at high school. Reference letters can be very helpful for revealing, the full student. So they're going to see academic transcripts, or sometimes sometimes going to see test scores, but those letters of reference can be enlightening about who that student is as a person. So maybe you ask someone who's not on the academic side, someone like the volunteer coordinator where you're volunteering, and they can talk about the compassion of that student and how they're very hardworking and dedicated, so that it gives a full picture of who that student is as an individual. Include any part-time job history. That's helpful. Statistically, students who work part-time do better than students that don't work, so it's a great advantage to have had that part-time job. And remember to continue to look for scholarships all throughout your senior year and into all 4 years of college. There are going to be certain scholarships that are only going to be available to college juniors, college seniors who are working within their major. So we see a lot of activity. People really get excited looking for scholarships before they start their freshman year. But remember, there are scholarships for sophomores, and then there's a whole other pool of scholarships for those people working within their major at college. So continue to be really looking for those scholarships throughout all 4 years of college and as you lead up to college. One little caution here, do be aware of scams. You should never have to pay to find a scholarship. If you're being asked to pay anything, even if it's a very small amount, to apply for or receive information about a scholarship, that should be a huge red flag to you. Your high school guidance counselor, financial aid offices at your college or university that you're going to attend, they will absolutely help you. There's no charge for that. So if you're being asked in any way to pay to find or apply for a scholarship, probably best to avoid that situation. All right, so one we know that is a wonderful scholarship opportunity for you is offered by your credit union. And you can see here there are going to be 2 award recipients selected. These are renewable scholarships. We'll learn that renewable is even better. That means that yes, you could get it for 1 year, but if you meet certain criteria, that can be renewed. So a $1,000 scholarship is actually a $4,000 scholarship as your credit union is doing here. So make sure that you take advantage of this opportunity and start applying in December when the applications for this scholarship will be open. All right, so we know finding money, that free money that you're not going to have to repay, is a big priority. Another huge question in the minds of students and families is, which college should that student go to? What's going to be the best fit? These are some criteria that you absolutely want to have information on because this helps you choose the college that's going to be the right fit for that student and your family. Really important, what are the graduation statistics? If my student goes to this college, how likely are they to make it to senior year and then finally to graduation? What sort of support mechanisms are available on campus to help with that? Because the number one thing you're there to accomplish is getting your degree and graduating. Also, once I've graduated, what's the job placement rate? How many people are working within that career field that they've studied for by the time they're graduating? So important information here. Top of the list here is university accreditation. You want to make sure that the university that you're spending your time, money, effort at is accredited so that your degree is recognized by employers and other institutions of higher ed should you decide to go on for graduate level work. So you're like, great, this is a nice list of things I should check out, but where on earth am I going to find all of this information? Well, it's actually been made very easy for you. The U.S. National Center for Education Statistics manages a website commonly referred to as the College Navigator. You can check this out, research all of the particular colleges you have interest in, and see some more in-depth information. The College Navigator is going to provide information for each of these subject areas. You can see, what are the admittance requirements? So I know if I have a GPA of 3.2, when students were admitted to this college, was their average 3.8 or was it closer to the 3.2 that I have? So it really is helpful. Parents oftentimes want to see information on crime statistics. Is my student going to be safe if they're living on this campus? So the College Navigator will give you all of this information for each of the schools that you're considering. So make sure that you go out, bookmark this URL here, and you can research to your heart's content. I have pulled a particular school, Ohio State University, so that you can see the type of information that the College Navigator is going to provide to you. This is really important, this basic information, because it first gives you the university's main website address. From here, you're absolutely going to want to check out the admissions page as well as the financial aid page, because this is where you're going to find out those important deadlines, key information that you need to know if you're considering this school. Also, this gives you a feel for what the campus might be like. You can see here that the student population is almost 47,000 undergraduate students. So is that going to be a good fit for your student? Are they going to feel energized and invigorated based on the fact that they're on campus with a lot of other people and there are tons of activities and clubs? Or is your student one that's going to feel overwhelmed by that and feel like they don't really have a personal connection to that college or university? So sometimes those, what seems like very basic information can be helpful in determining, is this going to be the right fit? In normal circumstances, I encourage everyone, if you're at all possible, to go on campus, take the campus tour, because it really is insightful in understanding what life is like on that particular campus. Because of COVID, that's not always available this year, but if so, and you're able to go, I would highly encourage you to do some of those in-person visits, because it is extremely helpful in understanding life on that campus. All right, so we know we have some basics that we've reviewed about this university. Let's look at, what might I expect in financial aid? So you can see here that students who are attending Ohio State, 79% are receiving some type of aid. So that means you're going to have a great opportunity to get financial aid at this school. You can see here, these are the types of monies that are not going to have to be repaid. So 70% of Ohio State students are getting some type of grant or scholarship that they're not going to have to repay. Also extremely important here is you see that there are institutional grants or scholarships. That means the school itself has money that they're going to award, and that money is $50 million. So that's why it's extremely important to check out the college's admissions page and financial aid page. You want to know, how do I get into consideration for this $50,000? Is it the same process as when I fill out my FAFSA for federal financial aid? Is there a separate application that I need to complete? Is it a different deadline from, what I have to do to get my FAFSA information submitted? So make sure you check out the school-specific website so that you know how to make sure you're in contention for that institutional money. All right, so you know kind of what you might look at in financial aid. You also want to know, what's this going to cost me? So you can see here the College Navigator is actually going to give you 4 years worth of data. So you can see how things are trending. So you don't want to go to a school and then get sticker shock your second year that tuition and fees have increased by 10 or more percent. You can see Ohio State is really keeping cost controlled. We're not seeing significant increases each year. What's oftentimes really eye-opening for families is that when you compare on-campus room and board that's actually more than tuition and fees. So that's an area where you're going to want to pay particular attention. Yes, this is a great school. I know how much it's going to cost in tuition and fees, but what am I going to have to pay to live on campus? So really helpful information on what's available in financial aid, and then also what you might expect cost-wise. All right, so let's look at what the process is. You're doing your research on the colleges that student is most interested in. Here's what you want to keep in mind as they start to do the applications. Deadlines, just like for scholarships, your applications for admission meet all of those deadlines. The earlier you apply, the better. If there is a charge, and most universities do have one, there's a charge to apply. So it could be anywhere from $40 to $100 just to submit your application for admission. You're going to ask the admissions office, hey, do you have any application waivers? And they'll send you a little code or something that you can put in so that you don't have to pay the application fee. Not all schools have application waivers, but if they do, you absolutely want to be asking for it, because the worst that can happen is they say, no, we don't have any, or they've all been used this year, or we only provide them to students that are identified to have a financial hardship. So definitely ask for an application waiver. Once that application is in, this is what college admission counselors tell us they're looking at. So first and foremost, grades, grades, grades. They want to see what courses you've taken, what is your GPA, and was it a college prep course? We hear from admissions counselors very frequently that they would rather see a student with a lower GPA that had a more rigorous course load than someone with a higher GPA that took some easy courses. So they're really looking to see, has the student taken the courses that are going to set them up for success once they get to college? Are they doing college level coursework or getting close to that in high school, so that when they get to main campus, they're going to be prepared to be successful? SAT, ACT scores, traditionally that would be next. Some schools are waiving that this year because of the pandemic, so you can check with your individual admissions offices. Strength of the curriculum, how hard was that coursework that they took? How relevant was it to what they're going to be studying in college? Essays can be extremely important. Many colleges will also base financial aid awards on essays submitted, so an important reason to have a good essay there. And then recommendations and those demonstrated interest of the student, which relates to their extracurricular activities. And again, a real focus here in those interest and extracurricular activities on those matching up with what they're going to be studying long term or future career goals. They're looking for that quality aspect versus quantity of what was done. So information on what they're looking for. Just a caution, make sure that your student's social media is a reflection of them that's a positive one, that admissions officers, when they look at that, would say, yes, this is a student that we think would be great on our campus and will represent our university well. So not a lot of time on that. Just make sure everything looks nice and presentable for any admission staff that might view their social media. 2 years ago, Harvard rescinded admission to 12 students for content they had posted on social media in what they thought was a private chat. So do be aware of that and do caution your students, which I'm sure you do already. Application ethics, just be honest about everything. If your student has something on their record that they're a little concerned with, don't be. This is a great way to approach it. Yes, there's this issue, but here's how I resolved it. Here's how I'm doing things differently. This is what I learned from that experience. So don't be afraid that that's going to prohibit you from getting into the college that you want. Do be honest about your intended major. Don't say you're going to major in something else because you think it would be easier to get admitted to that particular discipline at the university. Make sure students write their own essays. That's extremely important. And we know most commonly the culprit for writing those essays are the parents. So parents, don't write your student's essay. We hear from admissions counselors, like, we think that the parent wrote this, not the student. So make sure that that student realizes this is their opportunity to let the school know who they are, make it as personal and individualized as possible, so that it really speaks to the admissions counselors. Once you know which school you're going to be attending, you want to notify the other schools that you applied to, that you've made your decision and you're not going to be attending their school. This is important because what happens is once you notify that school that you're not going to be attending, I, who applied and am on their waiting list, will then get that seat opened up and they'll say, hey, Denise, congratulations, you're now admitted, you're off the waiting list. So it gives the school an opportunity to admit someone else that otherwise wouldn't have been admitted. So do let those other schools know. All right, before we move on to paying, Robin, were there any questions that came in that you want me to answer?
We actually do have a question. We have P. Lewis, who asked, are there any tips or advice for funding a doctorate degree besides applying to an assistantship?
For doctorate degrees, there actually I guess I should have asked this, if it's for a medical doctor, an MD or DO, there are specific programs for those students. For PhD candidates, there is a special federal direct plus program that is only available to graduate and professional students. So unfortunately, a lot of graduate professional work is financed strictly through loans. There aren't as many opportunities for free aid as there are for undergraduate students. A lot of times, I would recommend for graduate professional students that if they have a future employer in mind, especially in certain fields, those employers will agree to pay for some of that schooling based on you agreeing to work for their institution for a certain period of time. That's a commonplace arrangement. But unfortunately for graduate professional students, it's primarily loans that are available.
And I would like to add one thing. Denise mentioned our scholarship a few minutes ago. Our scholarship comes out in the beginning of December each year. And along with it, we do submit all the applications to the Southwest Ohio Credit Union League. And theirs is actually open to any year in college. So your student could get that actually while they're in grad school. And that one, it's not renewable, it's just for 1 year, but they can apply for every year that they're in grad school. So if you watch for our scholarship to come out about the beginning of December, it'll have directions on how to apply for the Southwest Ohio Credit Union League.
All right, great question. And thank you, Robin. That's very helpful.
Of course, yes.
Okay,
My daughter just went to grad school, so any way I can help, I get it.
yeah. All right, so let's look at paying because we know this is a huge consideration for most families. This is information compiled by the College Board. They're the organization that manages the SAT. So in the 2019-2020 academic year, average cost for a 4-year state school was over $26,000 per year. Average cost for a 4-year private is approaching $54,000 a year. So yes, college is very expensive. The one thing I would caution you here is don't have an immediate reaction of, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm ever going to pay $54,000 or close to $54,000 a year for my student to go to a private school. Because what you want to realize is that yes, it may have a higher upfront cost, But depending on institutional monies that are available, scholarships that are available, you want to apply to every school that's of interest to your student and then see what they get awarded in financial aid. Because that institutional money or college specific money could, while a school is more expensive up front, actually end up being less expensive than a school that has a cost that's lower right from the start. So don't exclude any schools that your student is really interested in because they have a high cost up front. You really want to apply to those schools and see what you would be awarded in financial aid, because sometimes a lower cost up front doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be less expensive than a school that has a higher upfront cost. So just a word of advice there. All right, here's what's going to happen in the financial aid world. You've picked your schools, you've applied, you've been accepted. It all starts with the FAFSA. Everyone should complete the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. It opens October 1st. So if your student is a senior in high school this year, you can do the FAFSA for them going to college next year. So October 1st is the key date. Important that you keep awareness that you're on the official .gov site. Just like with scholarship searches, unfortunately, there are a lot of scam sites for the FAFSA as well. That free application for federal student aid, you want to submit, because what happens, the schools that you're interested in receiving awards from, seeing what type of financial aid they're going to offer you, you're going to include those schools' school codes, which you'll find on their financial aid website page, and then your information gets sent to those colleges. They use it and then build an award letter for you to consider, hey, is this going to be a good financial fit for our student and family? So make sure you're on that .gov site, get it submitted as close to October 1st when it opens as possible. The convenience of it is there is an IRS data retrieval. So if you've filed your taxes, you can just electronically pull that information in, so you don't have to manually enter it. You do have to do this process annually. So you're going to complete a FAFSA for their freshman year, sophomore, junior, senior, all throughout college. Also, if you have more than one student who's going to be in college at the same time, you're going to complete a FAFSA for each student that's going to be in college. So realize this is going to be part of your life for the next 4, even 5 years. Other things to know, because it's October 1st, you have that senior in high school, you obviously haven't even finished 2020 to have 2020 tax information. So you're actually going to be using prior year income information in order to complete the FAFSA. If your student is a junior, sophomore, they're not quite a senior yet, so you're not going to be completing the actual FAFSA, there is an estimator on the FAFSA website. So you could do an estimation, their junior year or before they actually become a senior and you're going to do the actual FAFSA. So that would give you a general idea of what to expect. But do realize you don't have to have your taxes done because you're going to be using the prior year's taxes. We actually hosted a webinar on September 30th on completing the FAFSA. And so you can view that recording at this web address, or if you just wanted to download the slides. And this is all about, what happens before the FAFSA, while you're doing the FAFSA, and then afterwards. So do take advantage of going and watching that FAFSA-specific WebEx if you're interested in learning more. The FAFSA itself is designed to take about 20 minutes. It's not an onerous process whatsoever. So you can, get in there and quickly get it accomplished within a short period of time. Once your FAFSA is submitted and you've indicated that school code when you completed your FAFSA, then you're going to see that's what the school is going to use to build an award letter for you. The FAFSA results are sent directly to the student, so realize that they're going to go to the student. And then these are the types of financial aid you might expect. You could, see scholarships and grants, which we all want. There are loans for parents. There's the federal work study loans for students. So we'll look at these a little more closely here in just a second. All right, so scholarships and grants. We looked at that pretty closely just a few minutes ago. These are monies that don't have to be repaid. There is sometimes an obligation, and they can be awarded based on merit, based on financial need. There is a scholarship for everyone. There are certain scholarships that are only available to left-handers. There are scholarships available for people who are, culinary arts majors. So make sure you search and find as many scholarships as you possibly can. And then verify, are you willing to meet the requirements? So first of all, you might think, well, why wouldn't I accept that scholarship money? That's absolutely free, and yes, I'll take it. But sometimes students realize that it's a bit of a challenge. So, for example, I've known many students who received athletic scholarships, and they were going to play on the team representing their university. And after one season, they realized, wow, it's a little bit of a challenge for me to manage going to practices, traveling for away games, all of the other responsibilities that I have in order to keep my grades up and perform well as a student. So it may seem like a no-brainer, but just really think about what you're going to be required to do in order to receive those funds, and if you're going to be able to do that. Just like I mentioned before, make sure you find out if that scholarship is renewable, because it is. If it is, that's the difference between a one-time award versus something that is 4 times that amount if you get it renewed each year. A cautionary tale, a lot of schools will bump up the freshman year award. They'll put extra money on the freshman year award that is not renewable because they want you to select their school. So if you're a freshman, make sure you check, is this a one-time scholarship, or am I going to be getting this year after year? And then, use those award letters to compare your schools to see what's the right pick. All right, these are all of the federal grants. These are awarded based on financial need as determined when the FAFSA is completed. The largest one being the federal Pell Grant. You can see here the maximum amount for the for this academic year. This is based on there being financial need in the household. The Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, this is a sad one. The student must have a parent that died in Iraq or Afghanistan in order to qualify for this, and it's the same award amount as the Pell. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, you'll hear this referred to as FSEOG. This is awarded anywhere from $100 up to $4,000, depending on how much financial need is in the household, as determined when they completed the FAFSA. If you're not awarded the federal Pell Grant, you're not going to be eligible for FSEOG either. So those two kind of go hand in hand. The Teach Grant is for those students who are going to be going into the teaching profession, and it's a grant kind of in quotes. So students have to agree to teach in underserved areas for a certain period of time, generally 4 years, and that is, somewhere that there's a low income level, or it's a remote area where they have a little more challenge recruiting teachers. So if you, fulfill that requirement and serve as a teacher in one of those designated schools for the amount of time required, it truly is a grant. If, however, you don't teach in one of those designated schools, or you don't fulfill the time requirement, that grant converts to a loan and then has to be repaid. Obviously, financial aid will disclose that to you, but if your student is an education major, they could see a Teach grant on their award. Federal work study. So this isn't necessarily free money, but it is money that the student can get from having a part-time job on campus. This is an awesome opportunity. If you get awarded federal work study and you know your student's going to have a part-time job anyway, this is a wonderful program. So they'll have a job on campus. Generally, those are, in the academic departments or, within the offices of the university. It's not going to be food court or, janitorial services. This is going to be, typically working within the departments at the university. And the great thing is it's going to be way more flexible than an off-campus part-time job because, after one semester, they're schedule may change dramatically, and suddenly on Tuesday afternoons they have a lab from 2 to 4. Well, their off-campus part-time job might be like, no, we have to have you every Tuesday from 2 to 4, so sorry, this isn't going to work. The nice thing about federal work study is they're oftentimes very accommodating to the student schedule. You don't have to drive anywhere in order to get to this job. It's right on campus. So it's a wonderful opportunity. The other thing is, you're going to get to know all the professors. You'll find out first if there is a scholarship within that department, and oftentimes, they'll have a preference for it going to one of their work studies. So if you get awarded work study, I would really encourage you to take advantage of it. All right, so we've talked about the free money, grants and scholarships. We've talked about work study, where you're actually working for the funds. Now we're going to go to that next level of award that you might see, and that is a loan. So the federal direct loan is available to students that complete the FAFSA. They have to be going at least half time. It's a very low rate loan. It's fixed interest rate of 2.75%. There's a small origination fee. The student gets 10 years to pay it back, and they don't have to make any payments while they're in school and for 6 months after they graduate. So they don't have to immediately start repaying this. This loan is made in the name of the student. So it's 100% their responsibility to repay. If, when that FAFSA was completed, it was determined there was financial need in the household, the government will actually pay some of the interest on this loan for the student for the entire time that they're enrolled in school and for 6 months after they leave school. So if there's financial need in the household, then the government's going to help with paying some of this interest. This loan is not based on financial need in the household. So even if, I were the son or daughter of Bill Gates and Bill Gates fills out the FAFSA, his student can get that unsubsidized loan because it's really an access program for students. So let's see what this looks like. So for a freshman, you see the maximum that they can receive is $5,500 in an unsubsidized loan. If there's financial need in the household, then the government will actually subsidize $3,500 of the $5,500 direct loan, so that the student is only paying interest on $2,000 versus the full $5,500. You don't get to borrow both amounts, $5,500 and $3,500. It's $5,500, of which the government may subsidize interest on up to $3,500. And you can see the amounts do increase as they progress to sophomore, junior, senior. Independent students, most traditional students are not going to meet this requirement to borrow at those higher levels. You would have to be, 24, married, graduate professional student. All of these criteria would make a student independent. So most students are only going to be able to borrow at those dependent student levels. So when you think about it, this is a great loan, 2.75% fixed. They don't have to make payments on it. But when you're looking at a cost of $25,000, or more, it just doesn't go a long way to meeting their full cost of attendance. So a good loan, but just not enough of it. So we're going to take a look a little more closely now. We've gone through all of the free monies, the tuition discounting, that's going to be on your award if the, school is going to discount anything for you. The direct loan, which we refer to here as cheap money, which we just talked about. And then most families are still going to have a gap. About 85% of all students attending college, there's going to have to be some sort of other financing that goes on. So some families will have saved. You'll have a 529 plan that you can tap into. Some families will look at using home equity. Tuition payment plans are a wonderful option, and we'll take a closer look at those. And then once all of this has been used, most are going to choose between a federal plus loan and a private student loan, such as the one offered by your credit union. So we'll look a little more closely by pretending that your student was just admitted to University of Success. So congratulations, student, this was your top choice, and here's your award, what University of Success is offering you. So you can see they're getting the $5,500 for the direct loan, and then $3,500 of that is going to be subsidized by the federal government. So they're getting the $5,500 direct loan. The school is giving them a grant of $1,500. They're getting a state scholarship for $1,000, and they're getting a work study award of $2,000. So they've been awarded a total of $10,000. However, we know to attend University of Success, it costs $20,000. So that means you've got that $10,000 gap that you're still going to have to fill. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we're going to consider, do we really need a full $10,000? What can we do to reduce cost or make changes that will help us with that? And so here's some of the things that we want to consider, and we'll look at these more closely. So first of all, there's going to be certain costs that you're not going to be able to do much with. The tuition and fees, unless the school agreed to discount tuition, you're just going to have to pay this. So you have a fixed cost of $9,000 that you can't do anything with. However, that means that leaves $11,000, which is more flexible. So what can we do to help minimize the cost of those flexible items? So I have a comparison here. So one way is to look at your housing arrangement. We know very, top of the hour when we looked at cost, room and board can be a big expenditure. So, maybe rather than moving into a dorm with only one roommate, you're going to do a dorm room with two roommates to reduce your costs there. Food, we're not going to touch. We don't want the student to have to eat ramen every day. So we're not going to look at that food budget. Great place to reduce some expenses is with books. So maybe instead of buying a traditional hardbound book, that student is going to opt to do an electronic copy that they can look at on their iPad or their computer, and that's going to cost $100 for an access code versus $250 for the physical book. So any place that we can shave off some costs is going to be extremely helpful. Personal expenses, maybe instead of going out for coffee twice a week, we're only going to go once, keeping those costs down. Transportation in the world of financial aid is typically the cost of a bus pass or a parking permit to park on campus with a car that you pay for and maintain separately. So we didn't make any adjustments there. But by really looking at, our housing situation, adjusting the books, we were able to reduce our costs. We still have our fixed tuition and fees of $9,000, but the flexible has gone down now to $8,750. So that reduced our total cost from $20,000 down to $17,750. And then we're getting our $10,000 in financial aid. So that means our remaining need has gone down to $7,750. Like, yeah, that's great. But when you look at it long term, it's even more helpful because you're, paying $225 a month less. That's over the, 10-month academic calendar. If you don't have to take a loan out for that amount based on accrued interest, all of that you're going to be paying over repaying that loan, you're actually saving yourself $9,000. So $225 a month may not sound like much initially, but when you factor in the accrued interest, if you don't have to borrow that, it's a big savings. So anything that you can shave off cost-wise is going to be extremely advantageous. All right. Other things to think about. If circumstances have changed, we know that when you submitted your FAFSA for your senior this year, you used your 2019 tax return. Well, there's been a lot that's happened. We've had, COVID hit. We've seen people get laid off. If you have changes in your circumstances from when that tax return was filed until when you're applying for financial aid, you can appeal your award letter. So you're going to reach out to the financial aid office if you've had any of these things happen, listed here on the screen, and say, hey, we really want to appeal based on, our situation is different from when, that information was used to complete the FAFSA. The thing that you really want to keep in mind here is that appeals processes are generally manual. So it means there's a committee or a person that's going to request documentation to support your reasons for the appeal, and they're going to review them and make a professional judgment. So if you think you're going to need to appeal, do so as early as possible. At a lot of colleges, appeals committees only meet once a week. So you don't want to have your students' aid delayed because the appeals process is taking a while. So do realize that you have that option to appeal. Tuition payment plans that I mentioned, they're awesome. I affectionately, in the most loving way, refer to this as college on layaway, because what you can do is whatever that remaining balance is that you need to pay, you can break that into 10 monthly installments. So instead of having to take out a loan on which you're going to have to pay interest, you can make monthly payments towards their college costs. Even if you can't pay the full balance over those 10 months, maybe you look at your budget and you say, hey, I know we owe $7,750. That would be $775 a month. I truly can't afford that. Sign up for what you can afford. If it's $200 a month, then sign up for tuition payment plan for $2,000, because that's $200 a month that you don't have to pay interest on longer. So if you can, take advantage of tuition payment plans. Generally, there's a small fee to do this. $50 to $100 is kind of average, but it lets you break up those monthly installments, and you don't have to take a loan for that. 529 plans, if you have those home equity loans you could take advantage of. For most people, it's going to be a decision between the PLUS loan and a private loan. So let's look at the PLUS loan first. This is oftentimes listed on the award letter. Oftentimes it will say something like credit-based option or financing option, and then the student and their family are going to choose what works best for them. The federal option is the PLUS loan. This year, starting July 1st, it's a fixed interest rate of 5.3%, available to biological, adoptive, sometimes a step parent of that student. So it's not open to everyone. This loan is made in the parent's name. So the student is not going to be repaying this. It's going to be repaid by the parent, their responsibility 100%. It's a 10-year repayment term. You can see here there's a whopper of an origination fee. So if I were taking out a $10,000 PLUS loan, I would have to pay $423.60 just to get the loan. So do keep that in mind if you're considering the PLUS loan. That can be made for up to the full cost of attendance. So whatever that gap amount is that you still owe, you could get the PLUS loan for that amount. You can defer it, meaning the parent doesn't have to make payments on it while the student is in school and for 6 months after they leave school. There's no prepayment penalty for it. And then if a parent were denied the PLUS loan, then the student could borrow the direct loan up to those independent student levels that we looked at. So that's your federal option. Private loans are going to be a little different. So that PLUS loan, while it was made in the name of the parent, private loans are generally made in the name of the student with a creditworthy co-borrower to help them qualify. So that's the major difference between the federal option and the private option. Also, with federal loans, your repayment term can be anywhere from 10 years all the way up to 25 years. So some families will look at doing a private loan just because they want the longer repayment period, because that will give them a smaller monthly payment. So that's an option to consider. Pricing for a private loan is generally going to be based on the credit quality of the co-borrower. So the better your credit, the lower interest that you're going to have to pay. So this is general marketplace information. Next, let's look specifically at what your credit union has available. So your credit union is offering a line of credit, which is a little different. It's way more convenient in the fact that you're going to apply for this line of credit once the student goes into goes into school, and then you're simply going to request a draw every year thereafter. So that you open this line for their freshman year, you only draw what you need for that freshman year. Maybe you only need $10,000 for their freshman year. And then the rest of the line is available to you when sophomore year rolls around. Instead of having to reapply, you simply say, hey, we have an active line, and for sophomore year, we need $9,000. So then you make a draw for $9,000. So you're only using it as you need it, and you only have to apply once. It's available to all of the big public and private colleges and universities in your area. And you can see here the interest rates being charged by the credit union are really great. They start as low as 3.75%. So the better your credit score, the lower your cost for interest is going to be. There are no origination fees and no prepayment penalties. If you owe $40,000 or more on your line, once that student graduates, you get 25 years to pay it off. If it's less than 40,000, you'll get 20 years. So that provides for a very affordable monthly payment. But because you're not being charged any prepayment penalties, you could pay it off sooner at any time and save yourselves a lot of money in interest. So a really nice program. They also are offering full deferment. That means for the entire time the student is in school and for 6 months after they leave school, no payments are required. You can, if you want to, make interest-only payments, or you could do full repayment. Totally what works best for the student and their family. And then another advantage, a 0.25% discount. So while the rate is good already, you can reduce your rate by another 0.25% by having your payments automatically deducted once you're in repayment. And then finally, for that person who served as a co-borrower, and it could be anyone that's creditworthy that wants to help the student, doesn't have to be biological, adoptive, or step parent. Once that student has been in repayment for 48 months, the co-borrower can apply to be released from responsibility. So at that time, the credit union would run the credit of the student on their own as long as they meet the underwriting criteria that was used when the line was opened. If they meet that on their own, then the co-borrower's name is taken off, and it's then the student's responsibility to repay the remainder. So this is a great option for families who, want to help that student get through college, want to see them successfully get into repayment, but don't necessarily want to be on the hook for the full amount. So a nice option. You can find more information by going to your credit union's co-branded site with Student Choice, or call anytime 24/7 for additional information. All this is available to you from the credit union's website. And then finally, I know I gave you a lot of information in a very brief 1-hour event. So if ever you had questions and you want to do a one-on-one phone meeting with a Student Choice College Access counselor, you can arrange that right through the credit union's website. The address is here for you. You can talk about any of these topics. Once you go online, you'll pick a time frame that works for you, and then you can have a one-on-one conversation with the college access counselor on any of the areas that you want to discuss further. There's no charge for this. The credit union makes this available to you at no charge, so do take advantage of it. All right, thank you so much for your time and attention today. Robin, were there any other questions that we wanted to answer?
We do not have any other questions. People can still submit them in the next couple minutes. And while I'm waiting for those, I do want to let everybody know that this webinar has been recorded. So you should receive an email with the recording in a few hours or so. And you can also access it on our website at copfcu.com/webinars. And as I mentioned, the PDF has been uploaded along with some really helpful handouts about financial aid administrators, college applications, FAFSA info. So there's more information there as well. But since we're right at 1 o'clock, I don't see any additional questions. So unless you had anything more that you wanted to add, Denise?
No, just to say thank you, and I wish all of your students the best as they go through the college application and financial aid process.
Great. Well, thank you, Denise. That was such great information, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody.